The success of the Shadow of Mordor games was massive. They introduced millions of new people into the world of J.R.R. Tolkien, and they provided people an opportunity to explore Middle-earth in a way that was unthinkable before. And yet, like with most adaptations, there were deviations, massive ones in fact. New characters, changed backstories, fabricated lore, and generally how the world itself functioned was a far cry to Tolkien's writings. The timeline and the plot were also inaccurate in correlation to the Lord of the Rings, and yet that's ultimately nothing. Yes, the games created confusion around the lore for more casual consumers, and they were essentially fanfiction, but that's not what the issue is. Both games were very well made and fun to play, and so whatever we discuss today is not supposed to make you dislike these games, but rather provide a more nuanced perspective on how Tolkien himself would have felt about them, and if that ultimately even matters. Now, I'll be honest with you, while I have already disregarded lore deviations on a personal level, Tolkien himself would have almost certainly been upset about the drastic changes made to his world and vision. This can be understood clearly through Letter 210, written to Forrest J. Ackerman in reference to a potential Lord of the Rings movie. Tolkien had read the script and, to say the least, was not impressed. From the aesthetics of the elves and how accurately the Balrog was portrayed, all the way to the mannerisms of his characters. He even criticized the manuscript for inaccurately representing the passage of time and the seasons, as well as detailing the importance of food, which song was sung when, and whether the word registration was accurate in the Shire due to the absence of a centralized government. I could keep going, but I think you get the point. Truly, if you read the letter, you'll understand just how much criticism Tolkien had for even the most minute of deviations from his vision, which is almost certainly how we know for a fact that he would have disliked the Peter Jackson trilogy too, just like his son Christopher Tolkien did. And so, going back to the Shadow of Mordor games, from the extensive lore deviations, we already know that Tolkien would not have been a fan. Nonetheless, while a wonderful writer, Tolkien did not produce movies or video games, and the exact way something should be adapted cannot rely solely on the word of the original author, as much as it pains me to say. He simply didn't have the experience. Thus, what I would like to focus on instead is not so much the lore, but rather how Tolkien's vision, philosophy, and themes, the very heart of the Lord of the Rings, were abandoned in the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. Simply put, what would Tolkien feel if he saw the title of his books on those products? To their core, Tolkien's writings come down to four things: life and death, hope, perseverance over insurmountable odds for the sake of good, and a fight against evil. In The Lord of the Rings, there is a definitive line between good and evil. One, quite literally, is the work of God, Eru Ilúvatar, and anyone who accepts him in his heart. And the other is the absence of God's grace, of corruption, and especially in the character of Sauron, it is the domination of others. While there is a hard line between the two, it is ultimately blurred by secondary factors, such as Sauron's wish to dominate others for the sake of order, and order that would establish his own vision on the world, a vision he simply thinks is best. Conversely, characters on the side of good may falter and perform evil deeds, as the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Nonetheless, totalitarianism and the domination of the free spirit is a key instrument through which Tolkien conveys the way that evil operates. One ring to rule them all, after all. It is through domination that the Dark Lord can be identified for what he truly is, a tyrant. And in that, the contrast are the free people, the Shire, Gondor guarding the world against darkness. Now, in Shadow of Mordor and its sequel, your primary ability is that of domination. Largely, in my opinion, because there was a drastic simplification of how the One Ring operated within the lore. They must have thought, the One Ring vaguely dominates, so we'll make a new ring that will also dominate, cause that's what they do, right? We'll just give the player the misinterpreted superpowers of the ring for the sake of the power fantasy, while completely missing not only the process through which Sauron's ring was made, but most importantly the mentality and strategy behind its creation. Not to mention the themes and defining factors of good and evil behind it. The primary power fantasy and gameplay function of these games is dominating others, creating orc armies, gaining more and more power while torturing and magically lobotomizing the enemy. Celebrimbor was presented as this vengeful, power-hungry maniac, while reveals such as Isildur and Helm Hammerhand of all people supposedly being Nazgul went so contrary to Tolkien's vision and stories for these two characters that it is difficult to put into words. More often than not with these games, I feel like the developers wanted to shove as many Lord of the Rings trademark things as possible into one product, as much brand recognition as was possible, consequences be damned. The Ring, Minas Ithil and its fall to Minas Morgul, the Nazgul, Isildur, Helm, characters and things with millennia between them, somehow Frankensteined into a period of a few years. Nonetheless, Tolkien's main gripe must have been that the tale of these games does not have hope or perseverance over evil as its themes. In fact, I don't think it even represents the concept of the road to hell being paved with good intentions. It is, from beginning to end, a selfish story of vengeance, vanity, and using evil in order to defeat evil. This, while certainly interesting and a theme that has been done successfully elsewhere, is light years away from everything the Lord of the Rings stands for. Within the Lord of the Rings, the whole point is that you should never use evil to fight evil. You should never use the ring, you should destroy it. You should be heroic in battle, noble in spirit, because, as Tolkien himself said in letter 183, in the Lord of the Rings, the conflict is not basically about freedom, though that is naturally involved. It is about God and his sole right to divine honor. That there is what the Lord of the Rings is about, coming from the man himself. Whether you like it or not, God and the existence of objective morality and immorality are the core themes of the book. You cannot honor God and supposedly fight for him, and by extension for good, by dishonoring yourself in the way that our supposedly good protagonists do in order to fight Sauron. And to top it all off, the characters even utilize what are essentially hellspawn in the form of the orcs, beings of destruction and savagery whose very existence serves as a mockery of the children of Ilúvatar. This brings me to the reason I made this video in the first place. Originally, it was going to be an analysis of just this one character, but I decided there was more to say. Even still, the way this character was handled represents to perfection the flawed mentality behind the game and the sacrifice of Tolkien's values for the sake of what is essentially a Hollywood-esque production. Shelob. Shelob in Shadow of War is depicted as an attractive, raven-haired woman that, more often than not, attempts to outright seduce the protagonist, and I dare say the player. To add insult to injury, she was even revealed to have been Sauron's lover. There is literally nothing right about this, not even a single thing. Ignoring the lore inaccuracy of portraying Shelob as something other than an alien-looking hungry spider, a glorified watchdog for Sauron's domain, there is the matter of Tolkien's intentions. As I said, aesthetically and visually, Shelob is supposed to be this ancient terror, this monstrous predator that fills you with primal fear. She's the dark things that roam where you dare not go, an evil presence, the last daughter of Ungoliant who consumed her children. Looking into her many eyes, what you see is pure inhumanity. What Shelob is not, obviously, is a femme fatale, a generic sexy supporting character that manipulates the male protagonist. They cheapen Tolkien's story by turning her into something to be marketed, something visually pleasing. Shelob and visually pleasing are not supposed to be uttered in the same sentence. It's shallow because the reasoning behind it is shallow, and not to pass over it, but the implication that seductress Shelob plots to overthrow Sauron for vengeance because he betrayed her when they used to have an intimate relationship with each other is outright tone deaf. Lust And this type of visual representation of any character, male or female, good or evil, is not something found in The Lord of the Rings. Far from it. It's as if they wanted to add Shelob for the community recognition, but were unwilling to do so if it didn't tick certain boxes. And to reiterate, there is nothing wrong with seductors, male or female, or a femme fatale type character in your story. But to add it to The Lord of the Rings, and above all, to add it through the horrifying monster spider while making up a love story gone wrong plotline, is unjustifiable to me. At the end of the day, Tolkien sold the rights to his work, and what he didn't sell is in the hands of his successors. He himself knew that he couldn't control The Lord of the Rings. It had become something of its own. It makes sense then that in the process of adapting it, things will change and certain decisions will be made. Technically speaking, the developers or writers don't owe Tolkien anything. He is unfortunately gone. They made decisions that they thought would be what's best for their game, more appealing and more fun. And the game was fun. I would argue, however, that by losing sight of the intentions of the author, you start to lose the essence of what made his work what it was. The Lord of the Rings has a soul, Tolkien's soul, and this soul is what makes it what it is. It's not the names or the aesthetics. It's not the trademarks. It's his concerns, his hopes, his philosophy. Without these things, you can't accurately adapt his work because you're not looking for alternatives that would fit the rest of the puzzle so as to make it both coherent and, most importantly, authentic. This authenticity, this soul, or lack thereof, was to the detriment of these games. Simply put, it could have been any other franchise with different names and you wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. A massive thank you to my channel members, and thank you very much for watching.